Sit back and enjoy an hour of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get started.
Hawaiian pizza was invented in Canada at the Satellite Restaurant in Ontario in 1962. It was created by Sam Panopoulos, a Greek immigrant who decided to add canned pineapple to a ham pizza as an experiment inspired by the sweet and sour combination of Asian cuisine he was trying at the time. The name Hawaiian does not refer to the place where it was created, but to the brand of pineapple used. Over time, it became one of the most controversial and popular pizzas in the world. Squirrels can adopt baby squirrels they see that need care or that were abandoned. This behavior has been observed mainly in red squirrels, where females can take care of orphaned young if they are close relatives, such as nieces or granddaughters. Studies suggest that this adoption increases the survival of shared genes within the group, which is known as kin selection. Although it is not extremely common, it shows that even small wild mammals can display complex social behaviors. The astronauts of Apollo 11 could not get life insurance. No company wanted to provide it, so they signed photographs for their families to auction in case the landing failed and they all died. According to a study, the average woman will spend 17 years of her life on a diet. This figure comes from surveys conducted in different countries, where many women begin dieting in adolescence and repeat it intermittently over decades. On average, they may start their first diet around 15 years old and try dozens of different regimens during their lives. Elephants can reach things that are up to approximately 23 feet high with their trunks. This is because they combine the length of their trunk, which can measure around 6.5 feet, with the height of their own body and the ability to stretch on their hind legs in certain situations. Their trunk contains more than 40,000 individual muscles, which allows them to perform extremely precise movements, from pulling leaves from the tops of trees to picking up objects as small as a coin without damaging it. There is an edible mushroom that grows in almost all parts of the world called Watiparus. It is famous because its taste is similar to fried chicken. It is popularly known as chicken of the woods and usually grows in large clusters on tree trunks, especially oaks. Its fibrous texture resembles white meat, and that is why it is widely used as a plant-based substitute in different cuisines. Victoria's Secret model Karolina Kurkova was born without a belly button due to a complication at birth. Editors have a catalog of belly buttons in different positions so they can Photoshop them onto photos where she appears in underwear or a bikini. 5% of people will never experience a headache in their entire lives. Although it may seem incredible, various medical surveys have shown that a small fraction of the population claims to have never suffered this type of pain, not even in common situations such as stress, dehydration, or colds. Experts believe that genetic factors, higher pain thresholds, and differences in nervous system sensitivity may influence this phenomenon. In contrast, the vast majority of people experience headaches at least once a year. An episode of Peppa Pig had to be banned in Australia, where the anthropomorphic pig Peppa was shown being friendly with spiders, something that, in Australia, is truly dangerous. Even the most harmless spider there is a creature out of your nightmares that can kill you. Bad Peppa. The rumor that you should not throw rice at weddings because pigeons and birds can explode due to moisture absorption in their insides is completely false. People who sleep as they came into the world, that is, naked, are more satisfied with their relationships according to a study. Some surveys conducted in the United Kingdom found that those who sleep without clothes report higher levels of happiness in their relationships compared to those who wear pajamas. Researchers suggest that skin-to-skin contact may promote the release of oxytocin, a hormone associated with bonding and trust. In addition, sleeping naked has also been linked to better regulation of body temperature and greater comfort during the night. Despite having billions of neurons, the brain cannot feel pain. This is because brain tissue itself does not possess nociceptors, which are the receptors responsible for detecting painful stimuli. That is why, during certain neurological surgeries, patients can remain awake without the brain experiencing direct pain. However, the structures surrounding it, such as the meninges, blood vessels, and scalp, do have pain receptors, and when they become inflamed or tense, they can cause severe headaches. The cost of solar energy has dropped extraordinarily since the 1970s. In 1975, the price of solar panels was around $100 per watt. By 2026, the average price of solar modules on the international wholesale market is approximately between 15 and 20 cents per watt, depending on the country and the purchase volume. More than 1 billion women live in countries where domestic violence is not considered a crime. Company executives in China can be sentenced to death if they commit fraud. In the Chinese legal system, certain economic crimes considered to be of great magnitude, especially those involving enormous financial losses or seriously affecting the public, can receive extremely severe penalties, including capital punishment. In recent years, there have been cases of high-level executives convicted of multi-million-dollar fraud, corruption, or embezzlement schemes. Mike the Headless Chicken is a chicken that survived 18 months after his head was cut off. The event occurred in 1945 in Colorado, when the farmer who attempted to slaughter him did not completely sever the brain stem or the jugular vein, which allowed the bird to maintain basic functions. His owner fed him with a dropper directly into the esophagus and cleaned the mucus to prevent him from choking. Over time, he became a national attraction and generated significant income at fairs and shows. The first Mortal Kombat game was based on a Jean-Claude Van Damme game that failed. They kept the character anyway and named him Johnny Cage. In 2008, the police in Great Britain granted a firearms license to a 7-year-old boy. The permit was not to carry firearms in public, as one might imagine, but a legal certificate to use an air rifle under strict supervision. In the United Kingdom, minors can obtain this type of license under specific circumstances, as long as there is parental consent and strict safety regulations are followed. There is an extremely rare variant of tiger called the golden tiger. Currently, there are fewer than 30 individuals. Also known as the golden tabby tiger, it is not a distinct subspecies, but a genetic variation of the Bengal tiger that affects fur pigmentation, producing a lighter tone and softer, wider stripes. This condition is the result of a rare recessive gene, and most of the individuals that exist today are in captivity, since in the wild, their survival would be more complicated due to their reduced ability to camouflage. The largest and most complex Japanese character of all is called Taito. It is made up of 84 strokes and means the appearance of a dragon in full flight. It clearly looks like a dragon, you can tell right away. Seals, sea lions, and walruses are close relatives of bears. These animals share a common ancestor that lived more than 50 million years ago. This ancestor was a land mammal similar to an otter that gradually adapted to aquatic life, giving rise to modern seals. Veins can appear blue because subcutaneous fat only allows blue light to pass through to where the veins are, so that is the only color that is reflected, causing this peculiar effect. When humans breathe, we only replace 15% of the air in our lungs. In contrast, when dolphins breathe, they can replace up to 90% of the air inside their lungs. These mammals have millions of years of adaptation to life in the sea. Leafcutter ants do not eat the leaves they collect. In reality, they use these leaves to cultivate a specific type of fungus inside their nests. They feed the fungus with the cut leaves and then feed on the fungus they grow, acting as an external digestive system for the ants. The reason why photos from past decades at sporting events have a blue tint and thick haze is actually because people were allowed to smoke in indoor stadiums, which caused the smoke to concentrate and become visible under the lighting. The fossil of Borealopelta is so well preserved that it looks like a sculpture. Discovered accidentally by Canadian miners in 2011, this 110-million-year-old dinosaur preserves its skin and soft tissues intact, allowing scientists to see what it really looked like without the need for speculation to recreate its appearance. The continents separated long ago at the same speed that fingernails grow. That is, very slow, but fast at the same time. In Brazil, a Mega Man comic licensed by Capcom called The New Adventures of Mega Man was published. It only lasted 16 issues between 1996 and 1998, but it is remembered by fans because it included strange and unusual elements in the franchise. Later, the creators of the comic admitted that they had never played a Mega Man title. One day, Charlie Sheen spent $6,500 on 2,615 seats at the Anaheim Stadium to catch a home run with 3 friends. There was not a single home run in the game that day. Typical Charlie Sheen. Cats are actually neither nocturnal nor diurnal, but crepuscular. This means they are more active during dawn and dusk. This evolutionary adaptation allows them to hunt when their prey is most active and the light is dim, taking advantage of their excellent vision in low light conditions. Beauty pageants for children under 16 years old are banned in France and can be punished with 2 years in prison and a fine of up to approximately $32,000. The musician from the well-known new wave band Devo, Mark Mothersbaugh, composed the main theme for the Nickelodeon series Rugrats. He later worked on the soundtracks of films such as the Lego Movie, Thor Ragnarok, and is going to participate in the music for the Minecraft movie. Cuttlefish can change color almost instantly to blend in with their surroundings and evade predators, even though they are colorblind. They achieve this thanks to special cells called chromatophores, which expand or contract under direct control of the nervous system. They also have iridophores and leucophores that reflect light and create complex patterns in fractions of a second. Although they do not distinguish colors like we do, they perceive contrasts and the polarization of light, which allows them to adjust their camouflage with surprising precision even on very varied backgrounds. The video game Black Myth Wukong, developed by an independent Chinese studio and which sold millions of copies in its first days after release, is based on the Chinese novel Journey to the West. The popular franchise Dragon Ball is also based on that story as its original inspiration. Among the similarities they share, for example, both main characters use a magical staff. In half of the households in Asia and Africa, people pay a license to have television each year. There are flowers that only bloom at night that evolved to attract nocturnal pollinators such as moths or bats. These flowers usually have light colors such as white or pale yellow and emit intense fragrances to make them easier to locate in the dark. In 2012, mathematician V. Hart sent an open letter to Nickelodeon Studios to inform them that the pineapple where SpongeBob lives has a geometrically impossible design. The creator of the pineapple responded on his blog, saying they would change it to a mathematically correct design. That is the one now used in the show. There is an index called the Good Country Index that measures how much each country contributes to the planet and to humanity. In its most recent version, Sweden ranks first, followed by Denmark and Germany. This index evaluates aspects such as science, culture, peace, climate, and well-being, among others. The Latin American country ranked highest on the list is Chile, in position 33. Clement Vallandigham, a defense attorney, accidentally shot himself while demonstrating the possibility that the victim had shot himself instead of being shot by his client, who turned out to be innocent thanks to the demonstration. The best lawyer of all time. Although the color violet and the color purple are very similar, purple does not actually exist naturally. It is a composite color formed by mixing blue and red, while violet is pure, since it is present in the visible spectrum of light with a specific wavelength. There is a lake in Palau, a country in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where jellyfish evolved without stingers. This happened after the lake lost its connection to the sea, leaving these animals isolated from their natural predators. Now these jellyfish are harmless, and people can swim with them. When Samsung gave Galaxy S7 phones to athletes at the Olympic Games in Rio in 2016, the government of North Korea confiscated the ones that had been given to its athletes. It is believed that the same thing happened in Paris 2024 with the Z Flip 6 phones. Tigers can eat up to approximately 60 pounds of meat in a single night. Although they do not hunt every day, when they do, they can consume large amounts at once, since in the wild, they do not always know when their next meal will be. An adult tiger can devour a considerable portion of its prey in just a few hours and then rest while it digests. It may return to the carcass for several days until it has used up almost all the available meat. In some comic book issues, starting with Tales of Suspense 45 from 1963, Iron Man uses skates that allow him to travel at more than approximately 186 miles per hour. According to the dialogue, they are powered by jet engines and fueled by transistor energy, although that is not how transistors work, but oh well. In the state of Pennsylvania in the United States, alcohol still has an 18% tax to pay for the damages caused by a flood in 1936. The oldest public housing complex in the world is still in use. It is located in Germany and maintains an annual rent of only approximately $0.95, or its equivalent since 1516. As requirements, residents must be Catholic, have lived in Augsburg for at least 2 years, and prayed daily for the owners. The doors close at 10 p.m., and each apartment has a unique doorbell to identify it in the dark. People could not understand how a couple was able to keep a restaurant in China running 21 hours a day without rest. They began calling the place the Robot Couple Restaurant. Later, it was discovered that, in reality, the place was managed by two pairs of identical twins. Garbage collectors in Ankara, Turkey, opened a library with all the books they have found while collecting trash that people had thrown away. Their collection contains more than 6,000 copies. In Denmark, there is an underground vault that contains all the Lego sets that exist so far. It is located at the company headquarters in Billund and functions as a historical archive where at least one copy of every commercially released model since the mid-20th century is preserved. The collection includes thousands of sealed boxes, catalogs, and prototypes stored in controlled conditions to preserve their original state. It is a kind of time capsule that documents the evolution of design, engineering, and popular culture through the famous bricks. Even though Singapore has a reputation for being a free market country, around 80% of Singaporeans live in apartments built by the government. The Housing and Development Board has built approximately 1 million units concentrated in 23 self-sufficient new towns that are interconnected. This unique approach has made Singapore's public housing program one of the most successful in the world. Pat Morita suffered from tuberculosis at an early age, which caused him to have to wear orthopedic body casts constantly between the ages of 2 and 11. He was told he would never walk again. But fortunately, that did not happen. Later, he played several famous roles, the most well-known being Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid movies. King Fahd International Airport, which is located in Saudi Arabia, is currently the largest airport in the world by area, covering approximately 301 square miles. Despite this, it does not have the highest number of passengers. The airport with the most annual passenger traffic is Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta, United States, with 93.7 million passengers per year. An even larger one is already being built in Saudi Arabia and will be completed in 2030. The record for the longest marriage is 90 years. It was achieved by Karam and Kartari Chand in England. He was 110 and she was 103. Unfortunately, in October 2016, Karam died of natural causes. Explorer Michel Siffre conducted an experiment in which he lived completely isolated approximately 426 feet underground for 2 months without any time reference, and discovered that his biological clock had shifted to cycles of sleeping and being awake that lasted 48 hours instead of 24. NASA took the conclusions of these experiments into account for the Apollo space missions. Walt Disney decided to place trash cans in Disneyland no more than 30 steps apart. This was after they calculated an average of how many steps a person walks with trash before throwing it on the ground, something they observed in other company parks. Open Cola is an open-source, cola-flavored, carbonated beverage brand. That means the instructions to prepare it are available to everyone and can be modified. Jupiter's gravity could dramatically alter Mercury's orbit in the distant future. There is even a small probability that this planet could collide with Venus, Earth, or the Sun. However, this would not occur for billions of years. Gravitational interactions can have surprising effects on astronomical timescales. An episode of the series Scrubs that mocked that type of show that used multi-camera setups won an Emmy for Best Multi-Camera Editing. Babies have 30,000 taste buds, and not only on the tongue, but also on the sides and the roof of the mouth, compared to adults who only have 10,000 and only on the tongue. For this reason, they react in what could be considered an exaggerated way when tasting certain foods. The Flatiron Building in New York, built in 1902, caused so many wind currents due to its shape that when women walked by, their skirts would be lifted, revealing their ankles and part of their legs. The phenomenon became so famous that groups of young men would gather nearby to witness the involuntarily indecent act. When Yahoo started in 1994, it was called Jerry and David's Guide to the Internet, and it was only a page with a list of links to websites organized by categories. Just 6 years later, Yahoo became, for a short period of time, the most valuable company in the world, when its shares reached a price of $475. In 1945, a B-25 plane crashed into the Empire State Building, cutting the elevator cable. By the time the elevator reached the floor, so much cable had piled up underneath that it acted as a cushion. The person who was inside at that moment was injured, but did not die. Some squirrels cure mushrooms in the same way humans make jerky. They take the mushrooms and hang them on tree branches to dry. This helps preserve them during the winter, in addition to preventing bacteria and larvae from reaching their main food storage, where they keep acorns and other nuts. Somali pirates have an investment system similar to the stock market, where you can invest in a group of pirates who, after a successful raid, will pay you part of the profits. The idea that breakfast is the most important meal of the day is actually a myth. It was promoted by cereal companies to sell their products. In reality, it does not matter when breakfast is eaten or what foods are consumed, although it is still a meal that should not be neglected. The Roman Emperor Augustus saw a man who wanted to throw a slave to be eaten by sea lampreys as punishment for breaking a cup. Upon seeing this, Augustus freed the slave and ordered all of the man's cups to be broken. The word coccyx comes from the Greek term for the call of a cuckoo. They named the bone at the base of the spine that way because it resembles a cuckoo's beak. This bone is the vestige of a tail that many animals have, but in humans, it was reduced to what it is now. In ancient Egypt, actors were forbidden from testifying in court because they were seen as professional liars. Astronaut Chris Hadfield once mentioned that during his stay on the International Space Station, all the astronauts tried to move around using their own gases. Although it was theoretically believed to be possible, in their case it did not work. It did not provide enough thrust. Liu Siju, a Chinese math genius who won a gold medal in the Mathematics Olympiad, declined a full scholarship to study at MIT. He preferred to become a Buddhist monk in a monastery. According to research, people spend around 60% of the time they are conversing, talking about themselves. This number increases to 80% when it comes to conversations on social media. According to a study, birds never collide with other birds in the air because they always turn to the right. Research on flocks has observed that many birds tend to veer slightly to that side when approaching head-on, which reduces the risk of collisions. This behavior could be related to brain lateralization, meaning a natural preference for processing certain stimuli with a specific hemisphere. The first mechanical clocks, including the oldest pocket watches from the 16th century, had only one hand. These single-hand clocks indicated only the hours, similar to sundials. Precision was not as crucial at that time. Old tower clocks also had only one hand. In 2014, in Germany, the police found a man who had an arrest warrant for failure to pay debts. They found him in a casino. At the moment they went to get him, the machine hit a jackpot that he used to pay his debts right then and avoid jail. In 1956, IBM introduced its first hard drive, which consisted of 50 platters of approximately 24 inches each, with a total capacity of 3.75 megabytes. Although today thousands of times that amount of information can be stored on a card smaller than a fingernail, that hard drive was the foundation for the development of storage technology over the years. Female Greenland sharks reach maturity at around 150 years of age. This species, scientifically known as Somniosus microcephalus, is one of the longest living vertebrates on the planet and can easily surpass 400 years of life. It inhabits cold and deep waters of the North Atlantic and the Arctic, where its extremely slow metabolism delays its growth and development. Scientists estimated its age by analyzing proteins from the lens of the eye, a technique that revealed that its life cycle is extraordinarily slow. The gin and tonic originated with the British East India Company in India as a way to make the taste of quinine more pleasant, which was used to prevent and treat malaria among its workers and soldiers. To soften its bitterness, they mixed it with sugar, lime, water, and gin. Americans consume approximately 3,700,000 pounds of sugar contained in Coca-Cola each year. This figure is based on the enormous volume of soda sold in the country and on the fact that a single can contain around 1 4/10 ounces of sugar, mainly in the form of high fructose corn syrup. Lions used to be the mammal that covered the most territory in the world. They were present on all continents, but their dominance ended approximately 12,000 years ago when humans spread out and perfected hunting with tools. It is believed that 1/3 of the entire world population is infected with the tuberculosis bacteria, but the vast majority never show symptoms. The supermarket chain Walmart has an unwritten rule that allows owners of recreational vehicles to spend the night in their parking lots. This is permitted if authorized by the store manager, unless local laws prohibit it. Owners of these vehicles are considered among the best customers of this chain. In a study conducted with 200,000 ostriches over a period of 80 years, it was confirmed that none of them stuck their heads in the sand or dirt when they were frightened. They did not even try. Cartoons have been lying to us. Everglades National Park in Florida, United States, is the only place in the world where crocodiles and alligators naturally coexist. This unique ecosystem, considered the only subtropical wilderness in North America, is home to both species. Alligators have U-shaped snouts, and crocodiles have V-shaped snouts, and, in general, are larger. Corn, just as we know it, cannot exist in the wild. It can only exist if it is cultivated by humans. There is evidence that we have been cultivating it for about 7,000 years. The first move of pawns in chess, where they can advance 2 squares if the player chooses, did not exist in the earliest versions of the game. According to documents that have been found, it was first used in the year 1280 in Spain. In 1994, a FedEx cargo plane suffered an attempted hijacking by an angry employee armed with a hammer. The crew attempted extreme maneuvers with the aircraft in an effort to throw the attacker off balance, and they even flew upside down. In the end, they managed to subdue the angry man. This also sounds like a movie. White truffles, also known as alba truffles, are the most expensive fungi in the world, costing up to approximately $1,360 per pound. They grow mainly in Italy in symbiosis with tree roots. They are so rare because they only grow in the wild, relying exclusively on animals for their dispersal. The Woman of the Seine was an unknown woman who was pulled from the bottom of the Seine River in 1880. At the morgue, the mortician was so impressed by her beauty that he made a mold of her face. Today, her face is used for first aid training mannequins. She is the most kissed face in the world. Before 1916, people could enter the torch of the Statue of Liberty with capacity for 12 visitors at a time. The area was closed due to sabotage carried out by German agents in the incident known as the Black Tom explosion, which partially damaged the structure. Now, only maintenance personnel are allowed inside. The longest prison sentence requested was 384,912 years for a 22-year-old mail carrier in Spain who was accused of not delivering more than 42,000 letters. In the end, the sentence was only 14 years. The leaf grasshopper, in addition to having the evolutionary trait of looking like a leaf so predators do not notice it, also has its ears on its legs. Specifically, they have a structure called a tympanal organ on their limbs that detects vibrations and helps them hear sounds accurately. When you get angry, your face turns red because your heart is beating faster to send more blood to your muscles. This reaction is part of the fight or flight mechanism, activated by the release of adrenaline and other stress hormones. The blood vessels in the face dilate, increasing blood flow in the skin and causing visible redness. At the same time, the body prepares for a possible physical confrontation, increasing muscle tension and breathing rate, even if the situation does not end up requiring action. Weird Sisters, the fictional band that appears in a scene of the movie Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, features cameos by real-life musicians. The lead singer of Pulp, Jarvis Cocker, and Johnny Greenwood and Phil Selway of Radiohead. A man who got lost in a forest in Saskatchewan, Canada, broke a power pole so that workers would find him when they went to fix it. His plan worked. During the 1,232 episodes across the 25 seasons in which Ash Ketchum starred in the Pokemon anime, he only caught 57 different Pokemon. If evolutions are included as new Pokemon, his total was 98, which represents only 12% of those that were available to catch. Not a very good percentage considering that his goal was to catch them all. The kissing scene in the 2014 movie Noah was repeated so many times that Emma Watson ended up with blood on her lips, and Douglas Booth with a dry nose and lips. Disney gave actor Robin Williams a Picasso painting as a thank you for his participation as the genie in the movie Aladdin, where he was only paid $75,000. The actor was accusing them of breaking a specific agreement they had. He had agreed to voice the genie and receive that salary on the condition that his voice would not be used in merchandise such as toys or promotions. He even declared that he would not work with them again. The Picasso painting, as an apology, did not work. Last year, an injured turtle was found in a forest in Brazil. It had lost almost all of its shell. Some specialists created one for it using 3D printing, and an artist painted it to look like its original shell. The first edition of the DVD of the movie The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was designed to look like a pirated disc with the name of the movie written in marker. This caused many buyers to return the product because they thought they had an illegal copy. The movie Borat, which came out earlier, had a similar disc design. The characteristic smell that elderly people have is caused by a chemical substance called 2-nonanol that is secreted through the skin. This compound begins to be produced more frequently after the age of 40, when certain metabolic processes change and the oxidation of skin lipids increases. Unlike other body odors, it is not necessarily related to hygiene, but to natural changes in the body. In 1995, the company Namco patented auxiliary games, smaller games to play while the main one loaded, preventing other companies' games from using them. The patent just expired recently. In Poland, there is a forest where there are more than 400 pine trees that are bent 90 degrees near their base and have a curved shape. They all point north for some reason. These trees disprove the famous saying, "A tree that grows crooked will never have its branch straighten." American psychologist Timothy Leary was imprisoned in 1971, where he was given a series of psychological tests to assign him an appropriate job inside the facility. What they did not anticipate was that Leary had helped develop some of those tests earlier, so he used his knowledge to secure a gardening assignment, a position that allowed him to escape easily shortly afterward. A teacher from Utah, United States, was fired because she created a blog about homophones. Homophones are words that sound the same but mean different things and can also be spelled differently. When basketball player Yao Ming played for the first time in Miami, the game was promoted by giving away 8,000 fortune cookies. Yao was not offended because he had never seen one and assumed it was an American tradition. It has been observed that psychopaths are immune to contagious yawning and are unlikely to show the typical jump response when startled. Almost 1,100 million tons of food are wasted on the planet each year. Most of it comes from households, followed by restaurants and department stores. Most body fat leaves the body when we exhale. In 1996, Rowan Atkinson, portraying Mr. Bean, visited a shopping mall in Canada where he signed copies of VHS tapes with episodes for his fans. However, the situation got out of control. More than 3,000 people showed up, and Mr. Bean had to ask them not to push while staying in character. Although the event was supposed to last an hour, it had to be stopped after only 20 minutes, and Mr. Bean left escorted by a security team. In 1959, the winner of a local election in Sao Paulo, Brazil, was a rhinoceros named Cacareco, who lived in the city zoo. His candidacy was promoted by students. Voters chose the animal because, according to one of them, they preferred a rhinoceros to a donkey. 2 movies competed to have the song "Who Let the Dogs Out" when it was released. Nickelodeon wanted it for Rugrats in Paris, and Disney for 102 Dalmatians. But in the end, Nickelodeon won because it offered to pay to produce the music video and hold a special live concert with the band Baha Men. The difference between a slow metabolism and a fast one is 200 calories, or approximately 17 fluid ounces of Coca-Cola. The team that makes The Simpsons sent flowers to the studios where South Park is made when they parodied the series Family Guy in one of their episodes. The first time the Japanese heard the voice of their emperor was when he announced on the radio that Japan would surrender in the Second World War. A 73-year-old man named Herbert Sukernick received $17 million to move out of a rent-controlled apartment because developers needed the space to build the luxury building 15 Central Park West. This payment, made in 2005, is considered the highest ever given to a tenant to relocate in that city. A man asked Samsung for a cell phone in exchange for a drawing of a dragon that he made. Samsung sent him a special phone with his dragon printed on the case. On August 14, 1945, more than 1,000 Japanese officers entered the Imperial Palace to destroy the emperor's recording. It was when he surrendered in the Second World War, the first time the Japanese heard his voice. But since the palace is built in very complex, labyrinth-like shapes, they could not find the recording, which shortly afterward went on the air. They would have been better off each taking over a room and waiting for the bubble of 1980. According to research, the clearest lakes can be the most polluted. This is because acid pollution, such as acid rain, eliminates plankton and microorganisms that give color to the water, leaving it without living beings. However, there are also lakes that are naturally like that. In 1996, Bear Grylls broke his back after falling more than 2 miles when his parachute failed. 2 years later, he climbed to the summit of Mount Everest. His secret is drinking his own urine, apparently. The period in which food and agricultural products began to be transported from one side of the world to the other, starting in the 15th century, was called the Columbian Exchange. Before this, for example, there was no coffee in Colombia, potatoes in Ireland, tomatoes in Italy, pineapples in Hawaii, or oranges in Florida, foods that became some of the most popular in those countries. Some adventurers climbed the Ojos del Salado volcano in Chile using Jeep Wrangler vehicles and set a record for the highest altitude reached by a vehicle, approximately 21,800 feet. To celebrate, they put up a sign that read, "Parking for Jeep only." Shortly afterward, other adventurers managed to surpass that record by approximately 656 feet using a Suzuki Samurai and removed the sign in the process. In 2012, French beekeepers could not solve the mystery of the blue and green honey they were producing until they realized that their bees liked to visit a local M&M's factory. In South Australia, the best-selling beverage is Farmers Union iced coffee, an iced coffee that consistently outsells Coca-Cola. It is the only region in the world where a non-carbonated milk-based drink is more popular than cola soda. In 2007, a man named Jeremy Harper decided to count to 1 million. He streamed it live and did not leave his house or shave until he finished. It took him 3 months. When you turn 19 years and 4 days old, you have already lived 10 million minutes. The sea breeze exists because of temperature differences between land and sea. During the day, the land heats up faster than the water, creating low pressure zones over the land. To restore balance, the cooler air from the sea moves toward the land, creating this phenomenon. At night, the opposite effect occurs, the land breeze. Global debt amounts to $348 trillion. That figure is equivalent to around 3 times the gross domestic product of all countries combined. The brain of cats is biologically more similar to the human brain than the brain of dogs. The brain regions of humans and cats are alike, especially those responsible for generating and processing emotions. In 1980, a Star Wars Christmas album was released. It featured the participation of Bon Jovi, who, at that time, had not yet achieved worldwide fame with his band. He collaborated on the song R2-D2, We Wish You a Merry Christmas. Christopher Nolan thought the character of Catwoman would be too exaggerated and overacted for the movie Batman: The Dark Knight Rises, but his brother Jonathan convinced him to add her to the script. The video game Perfect Dark for Nintendo 64 was going to include a feature that allowed players to put their own faces and those of their friends into the game, either as enemies or as allies using images from the Game Boy camera. However, due to development difficulties, the feature was ultimately scrapped. The hole in the ozone layer over Antarctica is approximately 7,700,000 square miles. In some years, especially in the early 2000s, its maximum extent has exceeded nearly 8 million square miles during the austral spring, although its size varies depending on atmospheric conditions. The phenomenon is mainly due to chlorofluorocarbons released in past decades, which destroy ozone molecules in the presence of sunlight. The most decorated soldier of the United States in the First World War was an undocumented Mexican named Marcelino Serna. Cars can travel at whatever speed they want on the Autobahn, the highway system in Germany. However, it is recommended to drive at approximately 81 miles per hour. If an accident occurs where someone was driving at a higher speed and it could have been avoided by going slower, that driver will automatically be considered at fault. The lobsters that are usually eaten are young and are only a fraction of the size they can reach. Older or larger specimens have less flavor, but they can reproduce more easily. That is why they are protected. Killing a lobster that is 100 years old or more is considered a threat to the species. The French astronomer Guillaume Le Gentil spent a long time trying to observe the transits of Venus in the 18th century to measure the distance to the sun. However, when he traveled to India to finally make the measurement, clouds ruined his observation. Then he became ill, and when he finally returned to France, his possessions had already been given away and his wife had married someone else. After some time, he managed to rebuild his life and his scientific legacy, but not his wife. Leonard Nimoy only appeared in public as Spock once. He needed help from the police to leave the place because there were thousands of fans trying to get his autograph. Cicadas, also known as cicadids, produce a sound that can reach the pain threshold for a human if heard at close range. It reaches 120 decibels, equivalent to standing next to the speakers at a rock concert. Metallica was the first band to perform on all 7 continents: Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Antarctica, Europe, and Australia. Yes, apparently that is what the continents are called now. The author of the book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was a chocolate taster for the company Cadbury when he was a child, but at least they did not make him disappear. That much we know. The texture of aluminum cans that contain food is necessary to allow flexibility during the packaging process and to add structural integrity during transportation and storage. It makes them more resistant. The retail chain Costco sells approximately 60 million rotisserie chickens each year. In fact, the roasted chicken is one of its most iconic products and is kept at a low price as a strategy to attract customers to the stores. The company even built its own poultry production facilities in the United States to control costs and ensure supply. These chickens are sold with very small profit margins, but they drive the purchase of many other products inside the warehouse. The last player to appear in an official National Hockey League game without wearing a helmet was Craig McTavish in 1997. At that time, veteran players drafted in 1979 or earlier were not required to wear helmets, until the rule was established for everyone in '97. A woman in England has 4 color cones in her eyes, unlike the 3 that we normally have. This allows her to see 99 million more colors than average people. The 1960s Batman, portrayed by Adam West, was known for his moral lessons that included the importance of wearing seatbelts, doing homework, eating vegetables, and drinking milk. Glass is not biodegradable because its main ingredient is sand, which is not biodegradable despite being a naturally occurring material. Not all types of glass can be recycled, such as drinking and cooking glass that is treated with extra elements to increase its resistance to temperature changes. The astronomer who discovered Pluto's moon, Charon, chose the name as a tribute to his wife Charlene. Only later did he realize the fortunate connection. In Greek mythology, Charon is the one who carries the souls of the dead across the river Styx to the realm of the god of the underworld, Hades, also known as Pluto. When the final match of the 1950 World Cup in Brazil ended, the famous Maracanazo, 3 people died from heart attacks caused by the shock of seeing their team lose. The Tsar Bomba of Russia was the largest nuclear weapon ever detonated, but despite that, it was also the cleanest, since its modifications prevented 97% of the side effects. After analysis, it was confirmed that meteorites that fell to Earth during a meteor shower in July 2011 came from Mars. The rocks discovered in Morocco were likely ejected from the surface of the red planet during an ancient asteroid impact. The leader of the country of Myanmar, formerly called Burma, was advised by a fortune teller who told him that his country was leaning too far to the left, politically speaking. To fix it, he forced the population to drive on the right side of the roads, which caused accidents and a lot of confusion. The American football season of 1905 was so dangerous that 18 players died. The President of the United States at that time, Teddy Roosevelt, had to form a committee so that forward passes would be legalized. Some crickets build their own megaphones. It was discovered that some small crickets bite into leaves and make a pear-shaped hole and position themselves in such a way that the sound they produce is amplified by the leaf. They do this to find a mate. During the Tokyo real estate bubble in 1980, the area of the Imperial Palace, approximately 1 1/3 square miles, was valued at more than all the properties in the state of California, United States, combined. Bibliophobia is the irrational fear of having nothing left to read. Although it is not an official clinical term, it is used to describe people who feel anxiety at the thought of not having books or any other reading material available. Hitler planned to rebuild Berlin after the war as a neo-Roman city. The main building for events was going to be so large that it could actually rain inside due to the combined breadth of 150,000 people. In total, around 15 million Ford Model T cars were produced, of which, more than a century after production ended, it is currently estimated that 60,000 remain in running condition. A species of hermaphroditic worm has an unusual way of dealing with its loneliness. It injects sperm into its head in order to reproduce. The first aircraft carrier that China had was a retired ship that belonged to Ukraine that was sold to a Chinese businessman who acquired it to turn it into a floating casino in 1998. Rats can squeeze through a hole as small as 1/4 of their size thanks to their collapsible skeleton. In reality, it is not that their bones bend, but that their rib cage is very flexible, and if their head can pass through an opening, the rest of their body can almost always pass through as well. Michael Jackson's Super Bowl halftime show in 1993 had higher ratings than the game itself. It is estimated that it had an audience of 133 million viewers, this in the United States alone, making it one of the most watched events in the history of that country. Michael J. Fox was accidentally hanged for real and lost consciousness while filming a scene in Back to the Future Part 3. Cats normally hate water because their fur does not insulate them well when it is wet, causing an unpleasant sensation. However, the Turkish van cat is an exception. Its coat has a unique texture that makes it water-resistant, and it enjoys swimming. There is a library in Norway that is located on a boat. It is called Epos and has existed since 1959 with a capacity of 6,000 books plus 20,000 that can be on loan. It travels between 3 counties in the region. It was close to being taken out of service, but was saved thanks to the efforts of local residents. If you put a grape cut in half but still connected by the skin into a microwave oven, it can generate a ball of plasma fire. Before air conditioning was invented, people used ingenious techniques to stay cool. For example, houses with high ceilings so heat would rise, shaded porches to socialize during hot evenings, and sometimes they even slept on fire escapes. It is said that some people would store their underwear in the freezer so they would have an option to cool off quickly. The maximum prison sentence in Norway is 21 years. This was established after the death penalty was banned in 1971. Volcanic ash has been used as an abrasive ingredient for many years in soaps, erasers, polishes, toothpastes, and beauty products, among others. 48 hours after quitting smoking, nerve endings begin to grow back, and the senses of smell and taste start to return to normal. December 31st, 1844, is a day that did not exist in the Philippines, since the country moved from one side of the international date line to the other to simplify trade with neighboring nations. A pilot not trained to fly using gyroscopic instruments can enter a fatal spiral without even realizing that he is turning. A perfect Oreo cookie should have a ratio of 71% cookie and 29% filling. During the occupation of France by the Nazis in the Second World War, the French resistance cut the cables of the elevator of the Eiffel Tower so that Hitler would have to climb the stairs. In Homer's narration in the Odyssey, the Trojan horse is mentioned only as a hollow structure or a wooden device without specifying its shape. It is believed that the horse may have been a mistranslation or an artistic interpretation of the event. In the Second World War, the British captured Germans and placed them in a mansion with microphones where they were served luxurious food and wine. This allowed them to collect valuable information from the casual conversations the prisoners had. This helped end the war. People who play video games regularly are more likely to have lucid dreams, which is the ability to realize when you are dreaming and control what happens. On average, we spend 3 months of our lives sitting on the toilet. This number has increased significantly in recent years due to the rise of smartphones and social media. Eddie Murphy was almost not hired on the show Saturday Night Live, a job that launched his successful career, because they had already chosen an African-American member for the cast. Cornflakes, the popular breakfast cereal, contain more genes than people. It does not make sense, but that is how it is. Mike Jeffries, owner of the clothing brand Abercrombie & Fitch, once said that he does not want overweight or unattractive people to wear his clothes or be employed by his company. To be able to give someone a tattoo in South Korea, you must first obtain a medical license. Boxer Evander Holyfield lost more than 13 pounds in order to participate in his first title fight. When he won, he had to be hospitalized immediately. He required more than 2 gallons of intravenous fluids to recover. The bear Lotso from Toy Story 3 was going to appear in the first movie, but they saved him because the technology to animate his fur did not yet exist. In the first quarter of 2024, the total hours played in the video game Roblox reached more than 17 billion. This equals more than 1.7 million years of combined playtime in just 3 months. During that same period, the company reported more than $800 million in revenue. NASA astronauts earn around $64,000 a year. In the event of a nuclear explosion, it is not recommended to use conditioner because it can cause radioactive material to stick to your hair. The German interrogator Hans Scharf was against using physical torture methods. Instead, he took prisoners out for walks and invited them to eat, where they revealed information on their own. After the war, he moved to the United States, where he became a mosaic artist. Until recently, in 2009, in China there were still elementary schools sponsored by cigarette brands. One school in the province of Shijiazhuang had a sign that said, "Tobacco can help you become a winner," which is not true. The first commercial logo ever registered was that of Base Beer in England, on January 1st, 1876, just after the trademark law was approved in the United Kingdom. The emblem, which is a simple red triangle, has remained practically unchanged since then, becoming an icon of graphic design. A study showed that when a Monopoly player is given twice as much money, he generally begins to act disrespectfully toward his opponents and becomes more competitive. In 1898, Nikola Tesla made many people believe he could control a toy boat by shouting commands at it. In reality, he had invented radio control and was controlling the boat himself. The founder of the restaurant Wendy's, Dave Thomas, was an apprentice of Colonel Sanders, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Thomas came up with ideas such as making a commercial with a rotating bucket and putting the Colonel on television, among other things. Later, he sold his percentage of the franchises he owned to found what would become Wendy's. Onomatopoeia is the frustration felt when it is not possible to find an appropriate word for what you want to say, or when you cannot remember it. Kodokushi, which means lonely death, is a common phenomenon in Japan in which people die alone and remain undiscovered for a long time. In Japan, there is a service that rents average-aged Japanese men, where you can rent one if you feel lonely, for only $10 an hour. The skin of octopuses can change color up to 177 times each hour. Queen Elizabeth II received her first corgi in 1933 when she was still a child. From then on, she developed a great fondness for this breed, and throughout her life, she had more than 30 corgis, in addition to some dorgies, which were crosses between corgis and dachshunds. In 2022, the year of her death, she still had 4 dogs, which were later adopted by Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. Halle Berry is named that way thanks to a store. Her parents named her after the Halle store located in Cleveland, United States. Redundant acronym syndrome is when one of the words that make up an acronym is used separately along with the abbreviation. For example, VAT tax or HIV virus. Although caffeine is not a standardized treatment for attention deficit disorder, some studies suggest that it could help manage the symptoms. In a study with young, hyperactive rats, the combination of caffeine and exercise improved behavioral performance and levels of serotonin and dopamine. However, the effects vary in each individual, and more research is required. The Nenets people in Siberia have survived temperatures below 32 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 1,000 years. They depend completely on their reindeer herds, which they use for food, clothing, tools, and transportation. Capitonyms are words that change meaning depending on whether the first letter is uppercase or lowercase. For example, Lima in lowercase is a fruit, while Lima with an uppercase letter is the capital of Peru, or Qatar, which is a country, or what tasters do, and so on. In 1993, Pepsi ran a promotion in the Philippines where you could win 1 million Philippine pesos if you found the number 349 inside the bottle cap. Pepsi accidentally printed 800,000 winning caps. The anger of the people was very great, and brand executives even received death threats. Thomas Edison's last breath is trapped in a test tube in a museum in Michigan, United States. In 1989, the Mitsubishi Corporation bought a majority stake in Rockefeller Center in New York. That era marked the highest point of Japan's economy. But when the real estate bubble burst in the following decade, there was a recession. Mitsubishi had to sell its share. Around 17% of twins are left-handed, compared to non-twins where only 10% are. Sergeant Stubby is the most decorated dog of the First World War. He saved his regiment from several mustard gas attacks and warned them when an attack was approaching. After the war, he appeared in parades and met 3 presidents. City birds have gotten used to building their nests with cigarette butts. Burned nicotine helps repel parasites. Stevie Nicks is the only woman who has been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, once as a member of the band Fleetwood Mac, and again for her solo career. The Tanganyika laughter epidemic was a phenomenon that occurred in 1962 at a school in Tanzania, where a group of students began laughing uncontrollably. The laughter spread, affecting hundreds of people and forcing schools to close. It is believed to have been a case of mass hysteria due to stress. The first recorded cat name in history dates back more than 3,400 years in ancient Egypt. The cat was named Negjem, which means sweet or pleasant in ancient Egyptian. This name was found in a tomb in Thebes, demonstrating the affection Egyptians had for their felines. The first cat to travel to space was Félicette, launched by France in 1963 in an experiment where her brain waves and vital signs were measured. Félicette, also nicknamed Astrocat, survived the trip and landed safely, something that was not common in these experiments of sending animals into space. Research showed that people who play Tetris in the days following a traumatic event were helped in preventing the formation of associated negative memories. This was only tested with Tetris, but it is believed that other video games might also help. Less than 4% of the Earth's land has an antipode, meaning land directly on the opposite side of the planet. There are few places where you could hypothetically dig a hole of approximately 7,917 miles that would take you to the other side. The hobby of Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Mario Brothers and Company, is trying to guess how tall objects are. He enjoys it so much that he always carries a measuring tape with him. J.R.R. Tolkien served as a lieutenant during the First World War. He fought in one of the most important battles, and it has been suggested that the horrors of trench warfare shaped his later descriptions of Mordor in The Lord of the Rings. There is an action figure of the famous painting The Scream by Edvard Munch that has joints that bend so you can put it in all kinds of poses. Shut up and take my money. At the mouth of the Amazon River in Brazil, there is an island of approximately 30,000 square miles called Marajo Island, which is one of the places with the greatest biodiversity in the world. It was inhabited by the Marajoara culture, one of the oldest civilizations in Brazil, known for its decorated pottery. In Fairbanks, Alaska, it is illegal for a moose to enter a bar. This law was created because the owner of one of these establishments liked to keep his moose there and get it drunk. The animal would sometimes go very crazy and destroy things. In London, there are more Indian restaurants than in Mumbai or Delhi, the most populated cities of that country. An American college student who wrote an article criticizing seatbelts, expressing that they are an intrusion on individual freedoms, died in a car accident in which the other two people in the truck survived. He was the only one not wearing a seatbelt. The Statue of Liberty is actually in the middle of an action to free herself from chains. This can only be observed from the air. Her right foot is stepping forward, and next to it, there is a broken chain. There are more people in the Tokyo metropolitan area than in all of Canada. The first time the word nerd was used was in 1950 in the book If I Ran the Zoo by Dr. Seuss, a well-known author of children's books. In this work, the term was used to describe an imaginary creature, and, over time, the word became part of popular language to refer to people with intellectual or technological interests. In the region of Laguna in Brazil, bottlenose dolphins guide fish toward local fishermen and then signal with tail slaps for them to cast their nets. The dolphins feed on the fish that escape. These dolphins were not trained for this behavior, and this collaboration between dolphins and fishermen has been occurring since at least 1847. Due to the lack of family and friends at his funeral, the pallbearers of Lee Harvey Oswald, the assassin of John F. Kennedy, were reporters. Bill Gates founded in 1989 a company separate from Microsoft called Interactive Home Systems, with the purpose of decorating customers' homes with digital art by famous painters using frames with screens, technology that had not yet been developed. Currently, the company changed its name and is dedicated to marketing. In Lithuania, there is a theme park where you can experience being a citizen of the Soviet Union. Visitors have their belongings confiscated, are interrogated, have to wear a gas mask, and must learn the Soviet anthem. In the end, everyone receives a ration of vodka. The Supreme Court of Italy established that stealing small amounts of food to avoid starving is not a crime. In Cordia del Rio, Seville, Spain, more than 600 people have the last name Japón. This unusual surname dates back to 1614, when the samurai Hasekura Tsunenaga arrived in Spain on a diplomatic mission. Some members of his expedition stayed, and in the mid-17th century, the first baptism with this surname was recorded, referring to their country of origin. Genghis Khan exempted the poor from paying taxes, established freedom of religious beliefs, and offered people the opportunity to join his empire before being conquered and probably killed. The voices of almost all the zombies in the video game Left 4 Dead were recorded by the lead singer of the band Faith No More, Mike Patton, who has also recorded his voice for movies and other video games, including Portal 2. He is considered one of the rock vocalists with the widest vocal range. 47 million years ago, Whales walked on land. Their ancestors were mammals similar to small carnivorous deer that lived near rivers and coasts. Over time, they developed legs more adapted for swimming, noses that migrated to the top of the skull, and more streamlined bodies. Fossils found in Asia show clear intermediate stages of this evolutionary transition, one of the best documented examples of how a land animal returned to the sea. Approximately 25% of men in Russia die before the age of 60 due to the amount of vodka they consume. There is a club of people who look like the writer Ernest Hemingway that has more than 100 members. The King of Jordan, Abdullah bin al-Hussein, was an extra in the 1996 episode of Star Trek Voyager titled Investigations. The inventor of the upside-down ketchup bottle that has made our lives so much easier has earned up to $13 million to date. In 2009, Amazon sold diapers so cheaply that it lost more than $100 million, all to force Diapers.com to sell them their business. Many primates have the anatomical structure necessary to speak like humans, but they lack the neural connections necessary to control their larynx precisely. This brain limitation prevents them from articulating words and developing complex spoken language. It is estimated that the Beatles played together for more than 2,000 hours during their shows in Hamburg, Germany. This was before they obtained their first recording contract. During their most active period, they played up to 46 hours a week, and, according to estimates, before their arrival in the United States, which marked the beginning of their worldwide fame, they had already accumulated at least 10,000 hours of practice. Billionaire Forrest Fenn hid a treasure in the Rocky Mountains that was estimated to be worth between $1 and $3 million. To find it, you had to solve a series of riddles that he designed and published in a poem. The treasure was found in 2020 by a man named Jack Stoof in the state of Wyoming. Over the years, the search mobilized thousands of people and was even linked to several deaths before it finally ended. North Korea is the happiest country in the world after China. This according to a study conducted by researchers from North Korea. Ford Model T cars initially, between 1908 and 1913, were available in several colors including red, blue, green, and gray. However, starting in 1914, Henry Ford decided to produce it exclusively in black to optimize production and reduce costs, since black paint dried the fastest. The Model T was the first car produced in a factory using the assembly line system. The series Squid Game was planned to be a single-season story, but after its success, Netflix decided to order 2 more seasons. The creator of the series, Hwang Dong-hyuk, only had 6 months to write seasons 2 and 3, which were filmed at the same time. Before all of this, he had been trying for almost 10 years to get a studio to produce the series. There is a large number of radioactive wild boars in Germany that became contaminated by the radioactivity left by the Chernobyl disaster many years ago. They continued to reproduce more and more. This sounds like a bad movie. Dragonflies can fly backward, something that practically no other insect or animal can do. And they also have great vision with their compound eyes that allow them to see in almost 360 degrees. They also have 6 legs, but despite that, they cannot walk. They use their legs only to perch on plants. There are only 3 countries that do not offer paid maternity leave: Suriname, Papua New Guinea, and the United States.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.